Can you identify as a black person?
No,
Why?
because I'm not black.
I'm not a woman, but I can identify as a woman according to you.
If you transition, maybe.
What defines a transition?
If that's your goal, you know?
If you believe it.
Sure.
If you believe you're black, why aren't you black?
Well, that's just not, that's like genetics. That's like ancestry.
You're also born a man or a woman. It's the same thing. That's also genetics.
Okay, I'm over it.
The debate surrounding transgender issues is multifaceted and deeply personal for many.
Life begins when you understand living women matter more than potential babies.
What is it?
What do you mean?
If it's a potential baby, what is inside of a woman?
It's a fetus?
Is it living?
No.
How can it grow if it's not living?
Actually, that's like saying if an acorn is a tree.
When does the fetus become living?
Nope.
That's actually a good question, but that line...
Yeah, of course, because you don't know it. Because it's living. It's living.
Oh, wait a second, but I got something for her.
When does this clump of cells or fetus become living?
When it can sustain
But-
its own life.
But when is that? When is the sustainability? How do you sustain life? Like, my newborns aren't sustainable. You can't just have a newborn.
On one side, advocates for transgender rights stress the critical importance of medical care and societal acceptance.
Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people? Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
Well,
It's just interesting
I
because-
prefer to use precise language.
It's interesting because you come into this conversation, trying to hold this moral superiority, but then
I try to be moral when I can, but
Right, but when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language,
To include
and
who?
it seems to include people who don't, identify as women but can become pregnant.
So, like a person who's born a woman and then identifies as a man and is pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in order to be a moral person, I need to accept the idea that a man, someone who is born a man and looks like a man, can really become a woman. That's a prerequisite of my being a moral person.
I mean, yes. To me it is, because if you are trying to deny someone of their identity and deny what their life experience is, then that doesn't seem like a moral stance to me. I want to be accepting and I want to respect people's life experiences and respect the way that they want to identify and respect the way that they want to present themselves to the world.
Bronte, I would
Yes.
like to identify, I do identify actually, as the correct person on this issue of abortion. I identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity. Do you?
Well, you are not a medical professional, and abortion and pregnancy
No, I'm
is
just
a
talking about
medical
my identity.
concern. That's not your identity.
That is my, I promise you, that's my identity.
They argue that denying transgender individuals, particularly youth, the opportunity to transition can result in severe mental health challenges, including increased rates of depression and suicide.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair now recognizes Dr. Grossman for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Miriam Grossman. I am a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, author, and senior fellow at Do No Harm. I have been taking care of patients for 45 years. I'm going to use my time to respond to Dr. McNamara. First, I'm struck by her use of the phrase, sex assigned at birth. Sex is not assigned at birth. Sex is established at conception, and it's recognized at birth, if not earlier. Dr. McNamara claims that her views are science-based, but to claim that sex is assigned at birth is without any scientific basis whatsoever. Its language misleads people, especially children, into thinking that male and female are arbitrary designations and can change. That is simply not true. Dr. McNamara claims that social and medical interventions are the only evidence-based treatment and that scientific evidence shows it is life-saving. Without it, she's warning us, kids will commit suicide. Well, a growing number of countries have effectively banned the care to which she's referring. And thank God there's been no wave of suicides or other mental health catastrophes. 3 years ago, Finland placed strict limitations on medical interventions for minors. Sweden did the same thing after a 14-year-old girl was found to have osteoporosis and spinal fractures from puberty blockers. An investigation concluded, quote, the risks of anti-puberty and hormone treatment for those under 18 currently outweigh the possible benefits. The UK conducted a review and called the evidence very low. They've also placed severe restrictions on the care that Dr. McNamara calls life-saving. Norway also analyzed the data and has made similar changes in policy. The National Academy of Medicine in France warned, quote, great medical caution must be taken in children and adolescents, given the vulnerability of this population and the many undesirable, even serious complications the therapies cause. Doctors in New Zealand and Australia have published similar statements. Is Dr. McNamara suggesting that all these countries are rejecting evidence-based treatment and placing their kids at risk of suicide? Regarding that point of view, Finland's gender expert, Dr. Rita Kaltiela, said, quote, it's purposeful disinformation, the spreading of which is irresponsible. All 7 countries, and Florida too, of course, concluded that kids don't need their development interrupted, the girls don't need their periods stopped and their voices lowered, and the boys don't need to grow breasts. What they need is psychotherapy. I have other objections to Dr. McNamara's testimony. She insists that her position, only hers, represents standard medical care. What she doesn't want you to know is that there is no standard. There's a debate. There's a fierce debate. And on the side opposite her stand such prominent figures as Stephen Levine, Kenneth Zucker, Paul McHugh, and James Cantor, among others. These doctors are giants in the field. They have been treating transgender patients and gathering data and publishing papers about them, and I mean no disrespect here, but since before Dr. McNamara was born.
This perspective highlights the need for supportive environments where transgender individuals can safely explore their identities.
So what gender do you think you are?
Well, I'm a male.
Okay, well, maybe I think you're a woman.
No, legally I'm a male.
What if I say I don't believe you?
It doesn't matter.
Exactly, it doesn't matter if you don't believe me.
No, it doesn't matter because biologically...
What gender do you think I am?
I would assume you're female.
Yeah, so you're making assumptions.
Yes.
I identify as non-binary.
Hey, I don't, respectfully, it doesn't matter. What pronoun should I use?
You should use they, them pronouns.
What if I don't?
If you don't, I would consider that disrespectful, and that's actually an act of violence to intentionally misgender someone. Yes.
Here we come to the issue, and this is why I'm out here. You just said that's an act of violence. That means it's an actionable offense.
However, concerns are raised about the potential risks and long-term effects of medical interventions like puberty blockers and hormone therapy.
All right, big news day, so let's get straight into it with the Australian's media writer Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, this whole boycott of Woolworths is heating up, but meanwhile, a mayor in Western Sydney has asked his council to hand out thousands of Australian flags for free. So finally, we've got some people demonstrating pride in this country.
Well, James, great to be here. And look, why not? Why shouldn't we be proud of our country? Why shouldn't we celebrate Australia Day? And I think people are getting sick and tired of being told what they can and cannot do. And I think this has only really given Australia Day even more oxygen, and people have been given more reason to celebrate because it appears that Woolworths doesn't want us to celebrate Australia Day. And shame on them for doing that. Let the consumer go into a store and choose what they want to buy. But they're making that decision for consumers by removing these items and not having them in stock. And I think people will see straight through this. I was listening to